Hello. Hi, we'll start the WTA conference. I'm Hyun Kim, Chief Curator of Seoul Hall of Urbanism and Architecture. Today, this conference is a venue to share research results that concludes the research of the 5 teams that presented WTA research and proposal. WTA means what is to be asked. This open call started on August last year with the question of how to respond to the challenges during this pandemic. Questions, images, and hashtags gathered on the platform, as well as the 123 proposals submitted, were living proof and record of the situation. So I would like to extend my gratitude to you for your interest and participation to recover your daily life. It's actually second day of the conference. Among the 5 selected teams, we had MNK and 공원문답 yesterday. MNK spoke about redefinition of the vulnerable social group, and 공원문답 spoke about how to park, respond to the disaster in the era of COVID-19. So today, the remaining 3 teams, D.FLUENCE, Proud, and Urban Flow, will share their research. So we will start the first team's conference. I'd like to introduce Team D.FLUENCE, Lee-Hyun Lim from MIT Media Lab and Bom-Jun Kim from Indiana University. They conducted research on finding human, recapturing human experiential value to envision future cities. So please share your presentation when you're ready.
So thank you for having us here again today. So today, my name is Ian, and I'm here with my colleague Bom-Jun Kim, and also with the panels that we have invited again from our last session. So we're really excited to be here with everybody again, and then to share the next phase results of our research. So today we'll be sharing design visions, or kind of glimpses of what we envision, what these different COVID future experiences might be. So we'll take you through those. Before we do that, I would like to kind of recap what we have discussed last time. So this really comes from the context of what is going to be the life beyond COVID-19, and that we are really experiencing from this sheltering in place, quarantines, and all these new protocols. A lot of the changes have really happened upon us, and including how public have entered into the home from remote work to all these connected experiences, retail, entertainment, all of these. It's the boundary between public and the private lives are really getting blurred. So our starting question was, what kind of experiential values can we observe from this collective pandemic situation, and how might we leverage these values to imagine what the possible futures might be. So this is what we have presented last time, which is a mapping of all of the qualitative research that we did of interviewing a number of people across the globe. So here we have identified 12 different values, which we call value experiences. And as I mentioned, so this came from an extensive interviews that we conducted with a number of our colleagues in talking to people of different demographics and also geographic locations. So from that, it was our mapping, how we have organized the different interview results was by looking at self behaviors and adaptations, going to the center, and then looking at interpersonal relationships and spatial perceptions. So from those values such as self-care, identity, control, productivity. We're looking at more of the social experiences of social connection. What does it mean to be spontaneous? How are we experiencing the value of exploration? Or in this COVID times, like what does it mean of being local or familiar to your neighborhood, or how can we find these in digital communities? And lastly, we were also looking at issues of transparency of information, accessibility of those, and how that might mean in terms of how we feel about being part of such community. So those were the number of the total of 12 different values that we have identified, which all stem from kind of the core, as you see here, of the different emotion keywords that we have started as in the beginning. And this was an intention to look from the point of view of human perception, human emotion, and how we can maybe bring our memories of how we have felt and experienced the different societal experiences. So from that, so that was our last presentation. And since then, we've been thinking about the context of how we may apply these different value experiences. So this was a question that we gave to us. What if our world, and this is quite dystopian, forgive me, but what if our world is constantly revisited with this pandemic level of infections that may require us again to be always to go back to our social distancing, quarantine, and it's asking us to be adaptable and flexible in all cases. So imagining that, giving that as a context to our kind of future envisioning exercises, we started to think about what does it mean if we make the public and the social experience into a decentralized, into distributed way. Since we've been experiencing an exodus of public life into privately owned online digital spaces. And from those, we've been seeing, a web of physical and digital spaces to emerge from those, and how we're kind of navigating between our physical experience in person, and then also through the digital and virtual ones through some of the connected devices or on Zoom like we're doing now. So we wanted to think about, possible impact, kind of pushing this idea a bit further, an impact of these distributed and public social experiences in our lives, and what might mean for our neighborhoods and spaces around us. So we'll be showing a series of 4 different ideas that we've been teasing around from this WTA, the Open Call Opportunity. And what we want to kind of state right now is that we're not predicting the future with this at the moment, but we are trying to tell the stories of possible different futures. And through this, the intention that we have is to provoke discussion and questions and imagine what these other future, let's say, issues or some of the difficulties that we may imagine from this. So these are the 4 experiences that we'll take you through. So it's a mix that has started with the band that you see is kind of the unfolding of the 12 different values. And we've used these values as a starting point to look into relevant secondary research of the trends, signals, that can help us to ideate what the possible futures might mean. So this was a very unstructured and organic process, going back and forth and really iterating multiple times. And we have really came across a number of many different concepts, but we identified these 4 as the key ones that we wanted to share, because we were trying to tie this back to the 4 clusters, from starting with what it means closer to us in our private experiences, all the way thinking about more of the public infrastructure and kind of thinking about the community as a whole. So the first one is, we've called it Delivered to You. So here we're trying to imagine a city where all public and social experiences can be delivered to us on demand and through maybe recurring subscriptions. So this is something that we are experiencing already now. And here are a number of the trends and the signals that we have looked at. And many of them, as I mentioned, we're trying to look at across the first band of the light pink area, where it's a lot about self-care, control, productivity, which are some of the values that we have identified in the previous research phase. And so what's kind of interesting here is that we were looking at some of the trends and signals where a lot of the autonomous cars or on-demand delivery services that's already being introduced and being adopted into our current situations. So starting with food and beverage subscription boxes, I'm sure you all have tested or tried out some out of convenience and predictability that can be delivered to you at a recurring time. We may also see other experiences related to, maybe it's about culture, social experiences, education, medicine delivery, as you see in one of the examples up here, that can become delivered to you on demand and then through a subscription base. So here, another example that was an inspiration to us was a concept vehicle that can be, created for different purposes. So it can be programmed to become a moving office or moving doctor's office, or maybe it can be a small module where you can hop in, and as you're moving around the city, you get to kind of have this connected experiences from the mobility vehicle. Another signal and trends that we looked at was all these connected experiences that we're seeing. So, there is a surge of products, like this one can be a mirror, or, a running machine, or, spinning machine here. Those are all kind of helping us to connect and with other people who are exercising at the same time. So even though you are at home working out on your own, you do feel that you're part of a larger community, because through these connected and IoT devices, you can have this social experiences. Another interesting example was kind of looking at how these IoT may come in more engraved into our daily things that we use throughout in our homes. So for example, we've seen connected kitchens, but what if our bathrooms also become connected? So from a mirror that can sense the changes in your color of the skin or to your weight, something that can monitor all the time. And so these connected experiences that we're seeing here can kind of point us towards, how many of the experiences that you will have to go and seek out for can now come into our homes. Last group of trends and signals that we looked at was around the issues or the topic of logistics and last mile delivery. So with the advanced robotics from the autonomous vehicle with the drone paired, we've seen this in maybe science fiction. Well, that can definitely happen, and that's there are lots of research that's going into making that happen. But at the same time, we're also seeing micro fulfillment centers or micro warehouses that can come into our neighborhoods, because a lot of these systems are being miniaturized, and we're seeing advanced robotics that can be brought into maybe a back side of the store that will enable this last mile delivery being more efficient and more close in proximity to where we are. So with this, we're imagining, so beyond food and products, if all social and public experiences can be delivered to our doors, how will it impact our neighborhoods?
So activities and experience we used to do outside can be delivered to our homes, like not just Amazon, Coupon, or Netflix. In the future, there are programmed autonomous vehicles that hover around the neighborhood, delivering in-person healthcare and governmental service, as well as bite-sized cultural and entertainment experiences. Our previous public social experience will be now available in subscription-based delivery sizes as a companion to online experiences and delivered to our homes. So in this future, constant movement of autonomous delivery systems will occupy our street. A busy network of autonomous cars and drones will deliver products, services, and experience to our homes. So this constant movement of autonomous systems would work as a new infrastructure in our neighborhood. This extensive network of delivery systems and demand for at-home experiences will further accelerate decentralized or public and social activities. So we can call them just like Uber and experience them as before. So this increase in demand for at-home experiences will redefine the role of downtown district, or the main street where we used to go to restaurants, shops, and watching movies, CGV. In this future, as last mile delivery of services and goods will become an essential layer of city infrastructure. This includes the need of micro fulfillment and micro warehouses, to be located close to our homes. We may see vacant stores and offices in the neighborhood being reorganized and repurposed into micro warehouses and fulfillment centers. In this drawing, red blocks represent this new warehouse and the fulfillment center as a new node and hub in this area, the neighborhood.
Yeah, so this is not a new idea. I think we've been seeing glimpses of these in different maybe articles or in different visions, but we also want to kind of put together the how and see from what we have experienced now during the COVID times and how we may see this really coming closer to our future, into our neighborhoods. And if that actually happens, whether it's autonomous vehicles or another layer of fast moving vehicles underneath the streets, however it's done, if that actually happens, and if we see these micro warehouses coming into our neighborhoods, what would that mean in the reorganization of where we live now? And then what would happen to the downtown or the commercial district? Will we still have those, or will those go away? So keep that in mind, and we'll come back to some of these questions at the end of our discussion. So then moving on to the second one, we called it Home Gateway to Connected Experiences. So I've mentioned briefly about the different connected experiences coming into our lives, from fitness to sports experiences, culture, leisure, and all of those. So this is where, we are trying to go deep more into that. So as you see in this diagram, we're trying to kind of tap more into that social layer of social connections, spontaneity, familiarity, locality, explorations, and those. So in this case, it's quite interesting how we are almost a year into the pandemic, and it's interesting to see how many offices or schools or organizations, institutions have adapted to this current situation. So some of the inspiring examples that we have looked into was the adoption of gaming platforms. So efforts of, instead of, let's say, working on Zoom or on chats or on messages or just on file sharing platforms, the efforts has been going into recreating the spatial and the human cues into the digital space. So if I am working at a desk, and in this case, use the image that you see, we may recreate an office environment in the 2D space. And by creating this place memory, meaning maybe on the desk, it shows that what I am working on, all the files or the paperwork is laid out on the desk, so I can visually remember what I worked on yesterday, just like as I'm at an office. Or if I'm standing up as my avatar, that means that I am ready to speak to someone. Or if I am sitting down, that means I'm busy. So some of these cues that we have seen in a text-based form on online devices, now we're seeing how it's translation into more physical or more digitized physical forms in this one. Or again, another example is recreation of the physical spaces into the virtual space. So here's an example of the MIT campus that's been built completely on Minecraft gaming platform. So then the students can go, especially the undergraduate students who haven't been to school yet, and they can explore the campus and also meet others on this gaming platform. Another interesting example is more of using the digital or the immersive digital experiences is further into the gamification, but then using that to, let's say, have a cultural event. So we've seen examples of a rap artist hosting his series of concerts online on another gaming platform, Fortnite. And users would be getting a special background skin or a special object that they can wear, a special tool that symbolizes that they are entering this new experience or more curated experience within this gaming platform. And of course, even though everyone is at work in their homes, they get to kind of go into this new environment and feel that they're connected and they're really entering a program or a more curated experience through this digital gamified platforms. And then more into, let's say, more futuristic ideas here are some of the technology examples that we found were inspiring also. Definitely VR, and we've seen how VR can be used. But then there are some, kind of old new examples of using sensorial reality. There has been many ideas since the past of how we can maybe create a pod where we can experience not just the virtual space, but then all of the sensorial components from all the different haptics or the air, flow, temperature, scent, and all of those. Another one could be more into the AR layer of augmenting your vision. So if you, and this is an actual product that is, that is available in the earlier forms, is you can wear a contact lens that can provide you maybe simple information that's contextual based as you're navigating through a place. And so we can imagine how AR, VR, XR, all of these augmenting technology coming into play in our everyday experiences. So if we can sensify, digital contents and really recreate the human and spatial cues in the virtual space, as we're kind of seeing some of the efforts, will it replace the in-person social experiences? And if so, then how will it impact the way that, that we use our urban spaces and home environments?
So we imagine a future where virtual sensorial pods are quite affordable and widely available throughout our homes and public spaces. Interior of the pods can be designed to fit specific programs like an office meeting spaces, like a drinking bar or fitness. The size of the units vary to accommodate 1 or 2 people up to 5 people, and it can connect to as many pods throughout the world to enable connected social experiences. So these virtual sensorial pods will become an essential feature for newly built homes and renovations. It may also become like a desired feature to be shared communities. So the pods become a gateway to connect with others in immersive ways. For now, we are having a drink in front of the laptop to meet our friends through Zoom or FaceTime, right? But imagine the booking a happy hour with friends in different cities. So I can walk into the bar that is equipped with these pods in Boston or here Bloomington, Indiana, and meet friends in Seoul and join the virtual immersive happy hour. So this will set itself as a layer of immersive tech infrastructures, the next level of Wi-Fi and hotspots, something like a phone booth now.
Yeah, so some things to think about when, let's say, if and when and all of our social experiences move to the digital, if that ever happens, what could arise as possible problems in this case? Could it be a hijacking of my experience by someone else, just like, when my phone calls get hijacked? Or what are some of the issues around data security? Or would it mean that the public spaces would die and we'll see the death of public spaces? Or will it be the opposite? So what could this, first of all, if this ever happens of everything moved into the digital space, I would like to kind of pose a question to everybody about thinking the possible consequences of such migration. Third is about how memories of places from when we used to travel are now made, and then how it can be made in a different way. So here we're looking at kind of the signals and trends around exploration, locality, familiarity, and many of those also touch upon the issues of accessibility and the transparency of information. So we were interested in looking at how stories are being told. And this set of examples kind of go into the, an example of a store that's a secondhand store that really tries to capture the story of a product coming from previous owners, where the product has been. So what you're buying is not just a product, but then a whole set of history and story that it comes with. Another one could be about, and then some of the recent examples that we see is a use of blockchain. So blockchain as a way to, to log information along the way. It can be, verified, and it also can securely, store data. So then in the example of the second example that you see here is, imagine that I have bought a fish from my local supermarket. And with this kind of the whole logging of the storytelling, I can see where my fish has come from. But then this has been also been used to make sure that the supply chain of products are being done in a correct way, or that you can trust the sources of supply sources, or to make sure that there is enough inventory coming in through the checking of the supply chains. So it's interesting how this kind of checking the story or the history of a product through more of a physical writing of a story, all the way to using technology as blockchain, how that's really coming into play these days. Another set of examples is about how local stories that are tied to places and are offered through online and virtual spaces. So we're seeing from online sessions like the Airbnb experiences here that offer small guided tours, so you can experience the different cultures virtually, since we can't really go there, all the way to using, let's say, Google Street View, so you can navigate the streets, and in this example, the street art in Latin America, and you get to kind of hear about the story of how the art was made, or any related stories about the neighborhood. Or in the last case of using a VR, also you can set, within your comfort of your home, you can wear a VR device and go explore under the sea or in remote places. But at the same time, as you pass through that space, there are stories tied to where you are navigating or exploring, and you get to experience that. So these kind of set of examples, I think it's interesting, that shows how we can use the digital experience from a mere just looking through the websites or talking to people through FaceTime or these remote conferencing tools, all the way to using AR, VR, and other immersive technologies. So here we were kind of thinking about kind of reversing how we make memories. So we've been, since we can't really travel outward, what if our primary mode of experiencing the world is through products?
So it is quite limited for us to experience and make new connections by traveling. So we can travel to of course, we can travel to other places through VR, online street view, and other modes of virtual storytelling. But this experience can be further like a supplement by product-centered storytelling. As this drawing shows, from the airport resort in Summer Beach, Seoul, to New York, products can travel around more than people. The memory experience from travel now comes to you through the product. Within this digital world, locality is captured and transferred to us through contextual storytelling, focused around movement of products because they don't have any restrictions. So we imagine a future where the primary mode of accessing new stories and experiences are through products that are delivered to us. So each product has its unique story that capture how it was made, places it went through, people it encountered with, and events it experienced during its delivery route. For example, products can capture and deliver local stories of places it went through and unfold the stories to us in an interactive ways. So this image also shows packages taking plane instead of us people.
Yeah, so one question that came to us as we were discussing this idea of product-based storytelling was that we're already in a place where we are inundated with information from social media, from stories from other people. But if we also get products delivered to us, that also comes with a whole load of stories. We may face an overload of unwanted information and stories. So how, and I think maybe this is a question that's relevant to us right now. How should information and stories be controlled and filtered, or should it be, or should it not be? Now we're at the fourth idea of the digital publics. So in this one, we wanted to kind of zoom out further and think about the digital infrastructure that may enable all of these connected connected experiences at the same time, distributed social and public experiences. So finally, kind of we're looking more into the issues of accessibility in this case and how information can be more transparent to us, as well as how that may be linked to us thinking about our community, our locality, and also the identity of ourselves. So here we started with thinking about place-based media and also hyper-local media, which is what we are seeing a great use at the moment and also a need as well. So place-based media, meaning getting the contextualized information when you are passing through that place. So think of, Google Maps feature of I think this is an interesting one that you may everyone uses now is, you can explore what's in that area. You can also get updates on some of the events that's happening, or maybe, as simple as seeing the traffic of that where you are passing through. So that's kind of looking at the information in terms of place-based media. At the same time, we're seeing also rise of hyper-local media, and people are seeing a greater use nowadays to be connected with their immediate neighbors in their vicinity. So by connecting to them or sharing information or getting tips on how to do certain things, or even sharing their skills or, some leftover materials or goods going into, kind of local commerce. I think it's an interesting way of how we are rethinking about community and then also media in this case. Another one is in terms of community. We no longer belong to a community by geographic location. I may be living in one space, one area, one city, but I can be part of many, many, many digital communities. And also one may have many ways of communicating with others. So social media platform, we're seeing, we picked out some of the main ones that we experience now, but then there are many, many others that you can use. And it really depends on who's on which platform that you'll have to choose to go on. But it's at the same time as many of these, social media platforms and information platforms are all owned by, private corporations. There comes to a question about who owns the data and what is the algorithm that is bringing all these contents to me, and can I have the agency as a user, or who has the control? So some of the kind of the interesting, I guess, experiments and experiments going on right now is, is there a way that we get the power from the users and we can kind of control which information is being delivered to us? Can we also consolidate a lot of these different information, news, or social media outlets? And I can visually see what are the kind of the algorithms. Can I tweak the algorithms myself, turn on and off? Or also, can we own data ourselves too? So right now, we experience free the social media services that corporations provide to us. But at the same time, we're selling our data to them. So is there a way that we can own the data or have the ownership, or can we even kind of barter or sell our data for other uses? So lastly, I'm thinking more about kind of data and accessibility of these. We were thinking, what are some examples that maybe can help us to think about contextualizing that information so that you can access the information without having, knowing digital technology or having the devices to log on to. So some of the examples that we were looking at was beyond, Wi-Fi, 5G, LTE. Maybe there could be another way of transmitting data. So Wi-Fi was an example. It's still in development. It's not widely adopted, but that was an interesting way of using light to transmit data, and which means that we can also think about using light poles, which is already an existing public infrastructure, and maybe that can be enhanced to serve as a point of accessing public digital information. Yeah, so here we're questioning if digital space or digital technology becomes an essential part in defining or creating our public life in the digital space, then how can we envision a digital public infrastructure? Should there be one? And if so, what it could be, and how can we also create a physical component to this digital infrastructure?
So we used to meet people on the street plazas for social or communication, but right now, everything, of course, not everything, but a lot of things is happening in various social media platforms. Unlike public spaces, these digital networks are owned by corporations, private companies, rather than our communities. So digital public infrastructure is formed where everyone can participate in public and civic life in the digital space. This can start with aggregating feeds of information from different social networks, but you can control how users can view and filter information. This allows us to read and discuss relevant issues in our community, as well as participate in the governance of both online and physical spaces. Creating online a version of public space, like a healthy spaces that create social connections, a sense of community identity, and where difference and similarity can be discussed. So in these drawings, we use existing infrastructure, which is light pole, which is Ian already mentioned previous pages. So every social media platform is coming through the light pole, and we get all the information through the light poles. So at the same time, this digital public infrastructure should be accessible to people with all levels of digital literacy and accessibility. So smart public lighting infrastructure of the city can also serve as an information portal where residents or visitors can access the community's specific and localized information when they are in that specific area. We can be informed about our community, strengthen our connections to our neighborhood, and actively participate as community members. So in these drawings, as I mentioned before, so LiPo is working as infra to getting all the data. But whenever people reach out to those LiPo, then people can get have access and get the news or information about this local neighborhood and community.
Yeah, so you may, of course, you can access all of this digital information through your digital devices, mobile devices, and so forth. But here we were trying to think, can there be a physical companion that also allows people who don't have access to these digital devices or don't know how to log on in a more analog way? And could existing infrastructure be used that's already placed in our communities to maybe access or view that information? So there are lots of different ideas that we were kind of teasing around, and there are many literature and many research that goes into thinking about these digital public infrastructures. But in this case, I think what's also an interesting point to think about is if we as architects and urbanists and urban planners have been involved in shaping the public spaces, if we're seeing kind of a migration or formation of public spaces in the digital realm, and we need to think about creating a digital public infrastructure, beyond leaving this to the big tech companies who will be doing that, or maybe them working with the government partners to create these, is there a role, what is the role of us, the architects, urban planners, or urbanists in shaping these digital public spaces? That's kind of a big and broad question, and so I think that's something that I would like to leave with the fourth, the concept that we are presenting today. So with these, again, so these are the four ideas, something more into how products can be delivered to you, all of the experiences and small sizes that is accessible to digital connected experiences, kind of reshaping our neighborhoods through these micro logistics, last mile delivery, how the stories can be traveling through products and how we may receive and maybe create memories of the world through the movement of products. And also last one, the one we just mentioned about the digital public infrastructure. So again, these are not predictions of the future, but these are different possible stories that we want to kind of play with to imagine what are the possible directions, what are some of the problems that we may foresee, and then how then maybe we can bring that back to the current as we are thinking about the roles of what we can do, or what kind of new experiences, technologies, or spaces that we may design for the next for tomorrow. So with this, we would like to introduce our panelists again, who have made time again to thank you very much for everyone joining here today. So we have Professor HongJung Kim from Seoul National University, Department of Sociology, Dina, El-Zanfaly, Professor Dina from Carnegie Mellon University from the School of Design. We have Scott Penman, design technologist at Sasaki Associates in Boston here, and also from MIT Design Lab. He has worked with me for a number of years in the past. We also have Kamala Russell from UC Berkeley from Department of Anthropology, and Youngjun Kim from the University of Illinois at Chicago from the Department of Urban Planning and Policy. So we have quite an interesting group of panelists here, and I'm sure we can hopefully we can touch upon some of the issues that we have brought to the table today, and we would love to hear your thoughts and your comments on some of these ideas. Yeah, so I think my screen is now stopped sharing. I just wanted to make sure that we are all here. Yeah, so I would like to kind of open up the floor for a discussion. And I know it's a bit of a jump from what we have showed last time, which was a lot about these, the human experience values, and it was quite at conceptual level too. And then we did make a big jump, but again, to another conceptual level of possible impact scenarios. So it might be a bit difficult to make the connections, but yeah, maybe we can also talk about those as a starter, or feel free to jump on and on any of the topics.
It's great job, Ihan and Bungjin. It's very interesting that the four experiences are focusing on shared experiences and distributed experiences, whether it's like inside the home or in like digital publics or even the social experiences. They are all like distributed and reshared somehow, which is a very interesting concept. One question I'm curious about, in the second experience, you are proposing a physical pod for socializing or for creating shared social experiences. Shared digital social experiences. So why did you go to the direction of designing a whole physical pod and not like a mirror or a portal or a piece or a corner that, or even a tent that is movable, portable, that could be also like distributed or moved somehow?
Yeah. That's interesting. Actually, those are some of the initial ideas I think we were imagining. There are many also, let's say, movie references in this too. So when we were thinking about this concept, Ready Player One was a movie that we kept referencing, right? Having a multi-directional treadmill where you can run and then you can go join the virtual experiences. Or maybe it could just be a kind of a teleportation pod, something like a size of a scale that you can get on and then you get to experience. So there were many references that we were teasing with, but at the same time, we wanted to think about, can we use a space around us, not just us kind of mentally joining in a virtual space, but can we also change the walls or the scent or kind of all of the other sensorial aspects through space. So even though the pods may not look movable and it's really hard to kind of transport from one another or even to kind of change programmatically, we thought that could be an interesting way of injecting that into our home spaces, or if thinking about if that can be aggregated into, let's say, into a size of a capsule hotel, in Tokyo. What could that mean for our cities? So I think that was kind of one of the reasons why we made a physical structure, so we can inject that into our current cities now and see what that might mean.
There's also an interesting idea, the fact that it would be spatial, something that you actually go into, as opposed to something that's just on a wall that is a point that you address vis-a-vis a screen or a portal or whatever. The fact that it would be spatial would inherently imply that there's part of it you can't see, right? There's part of it behind you all the time, or out of your behind your blind spot, or kind of behind your line of vision. And I wonder if that would actually help in a way to be in a space, help legitimize the space in a sense. Because I get the feeling that when we have these screens, they really become hard to pay attention to all the time, because you have several screens, things are happening and you kind of get overwhelmed. But we exist in environments that are very busy all the time. We just learn to selectively filter out things that are behind us or not really in front of us, not part of our cone of vision. And I wonder if saying, okay, yes, this is digital, but it really is spatial. There's stuff you just can't possibly pay attention to. There's people behind you. There's, a bartender off to your left or whatever. If forcing that into an actual physical configuration would actually help make the experience a little bit less, digitally stale, right? Yeah, make it a little bit more real, for lack of a better word.
It's also interesting because it acts like a transitional space somehow. It reminds me of like spaceships, when you just jump into this chamber of like transition between the outer space and your spaceship. So it's like this. So if you look at the pod, it's basically like a transitional chamber between your world and someone else's world. So it's more like meeting, two spaces meeting, or maybe more.
Yeah, I mean, actually, after I hear about the transitional spaces, actually, it reminds me of the movie called Tenet. The Tenet is all about like you go somewhere that I don't know what was the vault kind of stuff that they changed the other dimensions kind of stuff. So yeah, I think that is really interesting aspect as well. Yeah.
One question.
Sure.
Yeah. Great job. I really enjoyed your job. And what a progress between such a short lapse of time. And one question is about, I don't see kind of the animals or pets or air or water. Like you did a good job and really elaborated kind of a making of a future cityscape, a post-COVID-19 society, and I really enjoyed it. But there's something lacking in your picture. That is the post-humans, or I don't know, more than humans. We are surrounded by plants and air, the material things that flow, that affect us, and that infiltrate into, into the homes and cities and everything. So that's my question and comment at the same time. Why don't you think about that material flows that are on the basis of our building up of a city lived by human beings and human relationships. Where are those beings?
Yeah, I think that's a great comment. I mean, it's kind of devoid of what all the things that compose our world. I guess we have cherry picked the ones that we wanted to include, and maybe that's a reflection of maybe it's a reflection of how I am at the moment, just being at home and always kind of communicating via Zoom. And that's and the only place I go is from my home to the market to buy food, and that's it. I don't see anybody, I don't meet anybody. So it might be a reflection of the current state of not including animals, nature, or any other kind of material flow of things. And probably that's also why we focus so much on the product, the box that gets delivered to us, because that's my only connection to the outside world at the moment. And when I get a new box delivered, that's a moment of delight, seeing that, oh, I have something that I knew that came to me. So I think that's an interesting point. And it's also a question back to us, that if we continue to live in the way that we are doing now, would it affect the way that we see things, the way we will design things in the future? Because it's what we will live, and the places that we'll live will be a reflection of our mentality and kind of our experiences. So probably it's kind of a reflection of both of our states and how we've been working collaboratively also via Zoom all the time.
Yep.
I really did love the third story though, the traveling stories one. I think that this one seems like this one asked the question a little bit differently. Instead of kind of posing these different possible scenarios, it seemed like this one seemed to say, a lot of these visions offer the opportunity to disconnect, but this one kind of pushes back against that and says, how could we actually create connections despite not being able to physically connect? And the idea of taking the kind of sterile Amazon box, same box size, same everything, and saying, okay, it's not actually a clean object. It actually has this really rich, possibly really messy history associated with it. I think that's super, super interesting. And how you can say it's not just the kind of blockchain life cycle. It's also when I go, pick up something off of the sidewalk, there's a history associated with it. Or if I get it off of Craigslist free, or if I trade it with somebody through Nextdoor, there's an augmentation of information on top of that thing that would create a kind of connection, I think. So I really liked how that one pushed back against the idea that we kind of silo and isolate, and instead asked how we could connect despite being physically separate.
Mm-hmm.
That also reminds me of the idea behind craft products, like buying an artisanal product from like Nairobi in Africa, for example. And when it arrives to your house, it has all this history and story about the maker of the object or the artifact, how this skill or craft has been in their family for hundreds of years, and how the material is developed. I think it could be also interesting to build on the traveling stories idea by also like sending something or incorporating something into the artifact that I receive more than that. I don't know how, but it could have beyond the story, it could have something that comes out of it, or I can experience something out of the artifact. So it's not just I received the object, but maybe it allows me to experience something, for example, or enables me to experience something.
Right.
Yeah.
You might even imagine that this would help us get away from the idea that everything has to be new. Instead, we start to cherish things with longer histories, right? More stories to tell. So the used item is actually more valuable in some ways than the new item. I know that's not the problem you were trying to address, but for the next project.
Or it could be also like just receiving sand from a beach in like Chile, for example, but when I'm touching it, I'm hearing also like, or listening to the sound of the beach, or maybe the experience, an immersive experience with it. So it could be mixed with like mixed reality and the object itself.
Yeah. So I guess the kind of the fundamental question is, how do we form memories and maybe connections to an object? So like memory, so when we buy a new product, the memory we start from zero, right? So it's the kind of the story that we develop or build through my use of a product. But in this case, we're kind of questioning, can the value actually come from where it was made from zero, and then also adding on to kind of the messy stories of its trajectory. So, and also if we're limited in experiencing the world ourselves, can we have a lens through a product to experience the different aspects of where it came through? Yeah.
Or the product could also record like its trajectory, and you can see its journey. Like it could even have like a camera or something, or even like a mic that records its journey until you receive it. And then it records your experience with it. And then when you send it to someone else in the other side of the world, the other person will see the whole experience that the object experienced.
Yeah, it's kind of scary. It means that you're kind of giving life to an object, right? Which we may not or may not want to do. Maybe objects should remain as an object, and we should not give it a life. And
the object, or the object is traveling and doing all the traveling for you and connecting all the experiences as well. It's creepy.
Well, what is interesting is that in the field of the sociology and the anthropology, we are starting to kind of acknowledging the vibrancy or animacy or agency of things and objects and non-human beings. So we start to think from their point of view. We think that we are creating the world, but from a very strange but a creative and productive point of view, inverse, a cat is regarding the society which is being made for them, and a kind of an object can travel, having experiences of many people. So those kinds of fairy tale optics are sometimes very productive and giving us the corrective for our anthropocentric vision of the world. So I talked about the animals and plants or something like that to give a brief conceptual scheme. There's a transhuman perspective and post-human perspective. I think transhuman perspective is more technology oriented, and post-human perspective is more non-human beings' point of view, considered. So it's very interesting to think of those different point of views to think about a certain phenomenon. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Mm.
Yeah, I think
I
that's
mean that
yeah.
it's not so scary to think about an object that is alive.
True, because we're so used to kind of telling from the story from the human, to be this anthropocentric vision of the world. That is also kind of the problem of the problems that we see now. I don't want to go into climate change, but that's also coming from kind of the anthropocentric perspective of how we manage the world. Perhaps we can also kind of talk about more of the how our neighborhoods or cities might be affected if, let's say, if we see all these products move, or if we see our local stores or storefronts getting changed into the storage spaces, or we see less use, cities less supporting human activities because many things can happen digitally or within the homes. So that was another kind of area of question that we wanted to pose through these 4 ideas.
Reminds me of your last question about the role of the architect in this EPA. And I think architects are those translators between humans and non-humans. They touch upon the material things, and they make designs in the future, etc. So, for example, as sociologists, we don't touch anything. We think, we manipulate the data and we write. But you guys are, you're trapped in that materiality that is not escapable. So you're good at translating the languages of the materials and translate them into human society. Unconsciously, unwaringly. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So we can think in that way. Yeah.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
And along that story about the translating stuff, so for this final presentation, we have actually spent some time to think about the representation method. So, we talked about a lot of stuff and we make a lot of diagrams, but in the end, we need to show some images in the end. So what kind of image is the powerful tools for us to describe our stuff? So, but the thing is, because we try not to design specific products or spaces, and it was more like conceptual and provocative ideas. So we use axonometric drawing skills method. So it's like a common method in architecture world, but we call axonography, which is axonometric plus graphic. So axonographic depicts the world through, so I want to talk about why we choose axonometric drawing. So axonography depicts the world through axonometric parallel projections, a drawing method that preserves all the scales and dimensions, which is often used in mechanical drawings. However, through use of this method, we sever this notion of functional drawings to expose various layers of emotions, experiences, and memories through juxtapositions of scales and figures. So this ethnography takes familiar everyday scenes and manipulate them to various scales, big, small, stretched, and distorted, to bring out new meanings and hidden stories from the everyday appearances. So sometimes speculated, sometimes whimsical. So these drawings allow us to express feelings and emotions about our spaces. That, at least that's how we see it, that's how we choose it. So, and the benefit of using this thing, the ethnographic tool method is kind of familiar form as a functional drawing. So this representation gives you like a kind of like a validity and believability to the illustrated contents. Like we usually see this kind of exometric drawing whenever we buy IKEA products. So when we open the manual, there is an exometric drawing. So it's a kind of like a common daily stuff, but at the same time, it's not the tool we use as a something platform to see something. So that's why we want to use this tool or method as a platform to or show our perspective. So I hope it works, and I hope it work for you, all of you, to understand what we try to do in this method as well. That's why I wanted to mention, and I wanted to actually ask, like, compared to, like, say, like a photorealistic renderings, sometimes this kind of drawing method works better. So I just want to mention about it.
I think it explained the experiences very well, and your suggested ideas or proposals. It was very clear, and we didn't even need to have like the text or the long explanation, because you could just like perceive from the diagram,
Okay.
which was interesting.
Sure.
Great. Yeah, it was a struggle because we went through many different representational formats, renderings, models, 3D models, or collages. So after testing out different things, again, I think it was our deliberate intention of not trying to give present these ideas in this is what will happen tomorrow in the future. We wanted to step away from that realistic representation, but to present it as these are possible ideas, and here's how you can maybe read it, and this is how it's more like one of the manuals that you can use to build, which you may decide or decide not to take it on as your task, as your project. So that was our intention in using this as a way to show this very conceptual ideas. And try how can we also use some of the architectural representation methods to do so.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty successful. It does highlight the or focus on the idea that all four of these solutions are kind of system focused or network focused, right? In many ways, they all talk about or focus on the idea of organizing some sort of new or newish network that we then partake in or experience. So I know you said that you weren't kind of focusing on a product, but I actually gravitated to just the very simple coloring and the very simple highlighting of a recurring element within that would form like the atom of these networks. So the box, right? The pod, the light pole, right? And I think that doing that, the combination of, okay, this is an abstraction in terms of an orthographic drawing. So it's nothing we would ever see. So it's inherently an abstraction. It's a diagram of sorts. And then the highlighting of particular elements does really reinforce the idea that this is a kind of systems thinking proposal or vision, maybe not proposal, but vision. So yeah, I thought it was successful in that regard.
It's also interesting because especially your fourth experience reminded me of the work of Sidewalk in Canada. So the Canadian government is trying to reimagine cities and neighborhoods. I think they are based in Toronto and they are focusing on a neighborhood in Toronto. So so the idea of adding intelligence on the neighborhood level, especially with like the fourth experience with the light pole, is very interesting. I think it has more potential than just social media and information. I think it could be more, it's really smart to use the light poles because it's everywhere and it's already like a built network and grid. So I think it has like more potential that you can use in like as a grid. I don't know what it could be, but I think that's interesting, especially if like data and our control on data. I don't know.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I think the key point that we have to think about, even in the Sidewalk labs, you know, the Toronto, that area with all these smart infrastructure is, again, who is building this? Who is going to take the data? Who has the ownership, and why would we partake in that experience, and what do we get from that? Mm-hmm. So I think the fourth idea that we are trying to explore is, can there be a collective ownership of data instead of, you know, how we are accessing information through internet, through, let's say, Facebook, on all these social media, Google, all of that. Could there be a social network or a digital public infrastructure, just like we're using the streets, or just like we're using the city that we're living in, that's owned by us, that we have a say in how things can be organized or managed. So it's an interesting, I think it's a concept to be further explored, or who should take the lead in developing this. It's like, maybe it's a, I don't know, multinational institution, like a post-governmental institution that will do this, or, well, I don't know. I think that's kind of also a big question now as we're thinking about the web, right? A lot of the issues that's coming through the web.
Right.
It raises the interesting notion that you would add kind of a spatiality to the internet, right? The internet is inherently a cloud, right? It doesn't really have a location per se, or at least it's not meant to. But the idea that I would access different parts of the internet based on which light pole I pass, or that my information would actually have a radius, right? So if you're next to the light pole next to me, then maybe you can see my Instagram profile. But as you move farther away, you can actually see less and less. And as you go to the next city, you have very little information about me. Like your vision fades. The access to the information does actually fade as you go farther away, and you tie it to a physical infrastructure instead of creating a totally abstract layer.
Or it could be the opposite, like as you go far, the more information you receive about this location and this person. And so it's more like connecting people.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like the further I am from Boston, but you're closer to this light pole, I will get more information about you. But as I get closer to Boston and maybe in your neighborhood, you just fade here.
Yeah, that's also interesting one.
Yeah.
I have two questions to ask.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Might not able to answer, but yes.
Yeah, okay, cool. And I think you guys create a good list of possible scenarios and templates to deal with new norm and future city. So what's kind of your next step for your team to work with the list of the scenarios that you guys made? That's the first question. And the second question is kind of might be aligned with what Dr. Kim mentioned previously. So I think the presentation shows how this idea can make our society better or how new environment will look like. But at the same time, if this plan or projection is fully implemented or realized, how this will impact existing social urban issues in space, such as gentrification, inequality, or segregation, and any other urban issues. And or what will be a whole new range of urban and social issues when your scenarios are unfolded in our society, space and society. So I know you are getting information from individual scale and using this information to reorganize and analyze for reinterpreting and projecting new future society and space. So I think there's a gap between a scale that you guys interpreted and what I'm asking about, but I'm kind of curious what you guys think about from some different scale aspect.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what we wanted to do. I think you've laid out kind of our next steps for us, actually, because these are ideas, these are provocations, these are concepts that can be further teased out and placed in when we place it in different scales. So right now, it's all coming from the point of view of a user, of a person, again, to these anthropocentric kind of view of how we may experience. But if we put this idea into let's say some of the social issues and see, can this idea resolve, let's say, some, as you mentioned, inequality or issues around digital democracy or some of the more profound issues. That could be one way of testing, placing this concept there, see what are some of the implications, and can we think of maybe go back and iterate on the idea to come up with a better idea to further ask the questions about. So this I think that is kind of our intention of coming up with these ideas, and it's not a way to let's say materialize or prototype or make it into something real for tomorrow, but using it as a tool to further question what are the problems that we can imagine for in the future, and can this be a way to solve it, or can we also come up with another problem to amplify the problem? So I'm kind of going back to your question with another question in this case.
I kind of wonder if one possible problem out of these would actually be too much control.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of these ideas point to the idea that we'll only interact with people that share our experiences. You get to choose your gym buddies and your pod group and your digital neighborhood and all of this stuff. And that all sort of sounds nice, but I think we've seen that the creation of those echo chambers and those very curated bubbles, one, gets a little stale, and two, can have some disastrous, bias reinforcing consequences. I think that one thing to consider is that there's a really interesting part about being in public, especially in an urban public, which is that you don't have control over who you interact with, who you bump into. You don't have control over the traffic and the weather and all of these things. And while those things, you might just mark them as annoyances or detriments, I think there's actually a wonderful part about them that forces us to adapt and to kind of broaden our horizons and to deal with surprise and to be able to improvise on all those kind of different non-controlling characteristics that get a little bit lost when we can only invite certain people, right? So I don't know, there's all of that stuff too, which I think is why I really like this traveling stories one, because you had no idea what you're going to get. You ordered a box from Amazon and it got delivered to you it was super nice and clean and pure and whatever, but who knows what's going to be attached, the baggage that it will come with, So I think that messiness is That's the reason I like that one so much.
This is a creative pause, by the way. Yeah, I think all of your comments today were were very useful. And I think we kind of went in many tangential directions and touched upon a number of different topics to discuss. So I wanted to thank everyone again for all of your comments. And I really, going back to Scott's comment about the messiness of urban life, and I think that's something is missing. I don't know if that can be recreated in virtual environments. Just the nature of having a closed virtual community, because you can't just walk into someone's, you have to be invited, or maybe you can just walk in somewhere. Maybe that's some of the kind of the tools or softwares that some companies are coming up with, so you can have this spontaneous, explorative urban experience. But of course, there will be a limitation. But another question is, I mean, do we have to recreate one-to-one translation of what we have in public in the digital? Maybe that's not the point. Maybe there could be, maybe you can offer another layer of experience that we can use as a let's say a complementary experience to what we have now. So I think those are again some of the interesting topics that came out from our discussion, and I want to thank everybody again for partaking in this panel discussion today, in your late evenings and in your early mornings.
Thanks for having us.
If I interrupt something, yeah, I just want to also say thank you for your presentation and all the comments. I'm also happy to see
Great, huge progress, and it was very concrete and advanced spatial and human and digital experience in various perspectives. And then also we already mentioned about the diagram. You said it's an axonographic, right? But I also think that it's also axono-infographic, because it has all the information in it. So it has very great power without any text. So, and then I really enjoyed looking at all the emphasizing autonomous vehicle and house with humans, because I can feel all the relationship between them. So, and then also the study that allow us to rethink about the house and public space, and also digital space, and also role of architects. And then so it was very great time to rethink about it. So, and then also the WTA, we started with the questions. So the question we are discussing now are also very meaningful question in this situation. So I really collect all the question in this panel discussion. So maybe type everything and then collect them. That's what I want to do after this. So, and then so it's really glad to see you all again, because all the panel members who participated in the intermediate result conference are joining us today. So I really appreciate your participation. So thank you very much. So yeah, that's what I want to say.
Okay, so thank you. And then, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. I hope to see everybody in person sometime.
Oh yeah, please not in the digital space.
Yes, and we can carry on the conversation with a glass of wine or a glass of soju together.
Oh, that'll be great. And then, yeah. Okay, bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
See you. Yeah.